Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. And guys, the saddest thing in the world is happening right now. It's the end of HBO's Veep. Probably thought I was going to say something else. But it's true. That is the saddest thing. For 7 seasons, Sarah Sutherland has been absolutely hilarious as Catherine, the overly emotional, neglected, entitled daughter of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's Selina Meyer. Let's take a look.
Leon, yeah. I'm not sure about this part where I say I want to be president for all Americans. I mean, do I? You know, all of them?
How about real Americans?
Oh, yeah, that's good. And then we can figure out what I mean later. Really, face to face, I can convince anyone of anything.
That's not true.
Incorrect.
You're both wrong.
Well, you're right.
You're
second lowest vaccination rate in the nation, and when I am elected president, you will be number 1. Oh, she likes me.
This entire country is getting more disgusting by the second.
That's a demo we're targeting mostly on Facebook.
Catherine's been suffering from postpartum depression.
How can you tell?
Well, the haircut.
I was the game changer. I took a dump on the glass ceiling.
Do you mean read that back?
Oh, we can't use any of that. I mean, it sounds like I'm shouting from a balcony in Munich.
Like a Vita.
I'm a boy, baby, all right. I have had Amy identify problem areas within the organization.
Foremost, there was a culture of blame which made people feel unsafe expressing criticisms.
What? What dumbass said that?
Everybody, please welcome Sarah Sutherland. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm a big fan of the Build series.
That is such a nice thing to say. No one has ever said that live on this. I mean, well, let me lie and say everybody who comes here says that, because that sounds better. Congratulations on finishing Veep.
Thank you.
I don't know if that's a congratulations thing or if that's like, I'm sorry because it's so amazing and it's ending. But it's really, you got to be a big part of one of, I think, the great TV shows that we've ever had, from beginning to end.
Yeah, it's definitely bittersweet for it to be ending, but I feel really proud to be a part of it. And it's really interesting because I don't have social media, and I was saying that this particular final season, because I've been more involved in press this year, I think I've felt more in touch with how beloved the show really is, and it's been so meaningful for me because I think, it was my first job out of school, and I think it kind of served me to not really be aware of how widely watched it was, if that makes sense. Like, I just felt like I was going to work every day with my friends and making a, YouTube video or something, and I've since realized
Crew
that,
of 150 people.
With Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So yeah, it's been really amazing to feel that and feel the real ceremony around the final season. And as much as people have expressed being really sad that it's ending, if not actually angry, it feels.
I'm a little bit of both.
I know people are violently upset, but I would rather.
I'm violently upset, but I'm upset.
I've encountered a few of those, but I'd rather that obviously than have people feel like they don't want to see another one. So
I mean, for me, the show, I know that the writers and everybody and everybody involved in the show is afraid of repeating themselves, but I could watch the show repeat itself. Like, I've rewatched other seasons of this show over and over and over again. It's almost a catharsis for me, and it becomes an almost lazy, oh, I have to feel better today, I'll watch a couple episodes of Veep. They're so mean, it makes me happy.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously with any comedy, some of the comedy comes from the repetition of it. And so in that sense, it's a formula that doesn't fail. All the characters kind of do what you expect them to do and over again. But that's what's been so nice about playing Catherine, because I feel like by way of the age she was when the show started and just her sort of nature, she's the character who over the course of all the seasons has the most opportunity to change.
Yeah, to grow and change. She's become a completely different person in last season and in this season than she was when we first saw her.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a constant kind of downtrodden, sullen, very sad outward demeanor. Yeah, of course, which feels appropriate given her parenting.
Oh, take me back to your audition.
Wow. Yeah, I went in to read for Allison Jones, who obviously is a genius and has cast so many of my favorite things, including Freaks and Geeks. And then I got a call back for the part, and I had a chemistry read with Julia, and Armando Iannucci was in the room. And it was the only audition that I was almost late for. I'm like chronically early, and I was stuck in traffic, and I ran in right at the second that they called my name. And I think there was something about that chaotic energy that I just didn't have time to overthink because, you know, I'd come from a theater background and I hadn't done any conventional formal comedy training. And so I was really out of my depth. And somehow something about the frenzy of the moment really worked. And I think part of Julia's genius as an actress isn't just her abilities herself, but also to make everyone look good. And so having that chemistry read was really helpful to me. And I think we really connected right away. And I read a few scripted pages, and Catherine on the page initially was much more combative. She kind of fought fire with fire. She was a lot more like Selina. And I think over time, Armando realized that that was kind of a standstill and maybe wasn't as interesting as if Catherine was a lot more vulnerable. But in the audition, he took away the script and he was like, I just want you to improvise and I want you to find ways to subtly insult Selina. And I was so nervous because I was like, oh my God, I don't want to say something insulting to this woman who I admire so much, but I remember making a particularly vicious joke. I can't tell you what it was, but it made Julia break and laugh. And I remember leaving the audition and thinking, even if I don't get this job, that was such a worthwhile, incredible experience to have.
Like the queen of comedy laugh.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
You said that you're a person who's chronically early. I'm chronically early as well all the time. Did you have that period of your life where you were insecure about being chronically early because people are supposed to be fashionably late? And then, because I had this, and then recently I was showing up earlier to something, and I was like, no, if they're late, screw them. It's better that I've completely gotten over that insecurity. I'm now just resentful of anybody that's late.
That's I think I started where you ended up. Yeah, because I did ballet training when I was younger, and then I went to theater school. And I think you're taught so heavy-handedly that if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And I just really internalized that. I also have a mother who's late all the time, and so I think I just emotionally overcorrected.
That's what we all do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Emotionally overcorrect. Working with or going from Armando to David, what was that like?
It was really interesting because, I mean, as evidence now, the show didn't change drastically, and there are even people who watch it who didn't know that happened. Obviously, when I heard, I was nervous just because Armando has such a specific way of working, and we did a lot of improv then, and a lot of the writing was born from improvisation that we did, and we rehearsed extensively, and a lot of times, we wouldn't have marks. They would just light the room so anyone could go anywhere in it. And so those massive ensemble scenes, I remember shooting one the take was about 28 minutes long in the end, and that's just one scene in the greater show. And so there's this element of it that was almost like doing theater that I really loved. But then what was so amazing is I think Dave kind of weaned us off of that, where in the 5th season we did a bit more of that, and then in the latter seasons it definitely was more scripted, but it still had that energy to it, and he really stayed true to what people, I think, responded to about the show. I think it was also it's such a specific tone of comedy, and there's never a set-up punchline. I think it's just, you're getting hit from all sides from different jokes. And I think even at the premiere, someone would laugh and they'd miss a different joke because they're just constant rapid fire. So
there was a moment at the premiere where I had already watched the first episode, and there was a scene with Jonah where a joke happened and everybody started laughing, and I almost wanted to tell everyone to stop because I knew they were going to cover a joke that was coming that was even funnier than the last one.
Yeah, it was also really amazing, though, to hear the laughter and, not make it in a vacuum. I mean, we make each other laugh all the time on set, but otherwise it was such an adjustment for me working on a comedy because, you're doing a scene that's supposed to be funny and you don't have an immediate response. So that was a really cool experience.
But you guys also break a lot, too, don't you?
Yeah, we do. I think because my character is so self-serious, and if I'm really doing my job and clicked into that, she doesn't find the other characters funny, and so it helps me because I have to just stay kind of stone-faced. But it's particularly difficult in scenes with Tony and Julia because they'll always go off and come up with little bits and then do them, but not, so if they ever forget to tell everyone, Clea and I are just squeezing each other's hands so tight because we're both quite, stoic. And so there are a couple takes for sure where if you see me turn and face a wall, it's because I'm laughing.
Wait, Julia and Tony will go off and come up with their own bits to do and to surprise everybody with?
Yeah, they'll think of little things whether it's when they're entering or an alternate line, and they'll always run it by Dave, but every once in a while in the chaos of everything, they forget to alert everyone else, and it's just...
I found, because I love the Armando seasons, and I love the Dave seasons as well, and I found that when I was looking for the change in the 5th season, the thing that I latched onto that was different was that it felt like Dave went darker on the personal stories. Like Armando, there were personal stories happening, but they all still very much revolved around the politics in a lot of ways. And Dave was like, no, we're going to talk about her mother. We're going to talk about all these things that made the show even just like a little bleaker, because you could see that the characters couldn't even connect emotionally to like the personal aspects of their lives.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I never thought about that. It's so true. You definitely get a window into everyone's backstory and what their actual interests are, which for Catherine was a really big win because, of course, she's not even given the time of day by any character until season 5, essentially.
Is it season 5 where she is making the documentary?
Yeah, season 5, I'm making a documentary.
True. Season 5 was kind of like a big season for your character, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the earlier seasons, my character is still in college, so she kind of comes and goes. And then the 4th season, she comes back and sort of touches the hot stove and lives with her mother for some inexplicable reason. But then, yeah, by the 5th season, she has the documentary and kind of the sense of purpose of being there. Yeah.
What is that like when you're working on a show for 4 seasons and you come back for the 5th season and you're starting to get scripts that are revealing you as a larger role in that season, or do they tell you beforehand?
No, it was really exciting because I actually sat down with Dave probably 2 weeks before we started shooting, and so I didn't know what was in store. And as soon as I sat down and not knowing what to expect, he was like, I just want to say that one of my favorite things about this show is the dynamic between Selina and Catherine, and I think it's sort of an unexpected color amid everything else, which was such a high compliment because it does sort of...
It's like Selina hates Catherine.
Well, and it's so interesting because, obviously she doles it out to every single person and she's brutal. I think no one gets it worse than Tim Simons, arguably, or Jonah, rather. But I think people feel it more when it's Catherine because you should be able to be less vicious to your own, flesh and blood and your own daughter.
And also we don't feel it with Jonah because Jonah's an asshole.
Right.
And deserves it. Catherine is just sensitive and doesn't and wants a little more from her mother, and that drives her mother crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she asks her mom for a hug or something, it makes her Selina insult the hell out of her.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one thing that I always ask the cast members of Veep is, one, what's the worst insult that got thrown your way, or the one that you loved the most? And 2, what is it like to get insulted all the time?
All the time. Oh, God. I will say this season, I can't think of something specific. I know Clea's favorite is Catherine, why is that your hair? Like, not even just toward me, it's just her favorite line in the whole show, because it's so simple. Like, most of the insults are really wordy and, like, something you couldn't think of that quickly in the moment, and that one's just so basic, and it just really, you like it too.
Really, why is that your hair?
Why is that your hair?
Really
but also this season, I think it's very funny that Catherine has just had a baby and she's in a state of postpartum depression, and I love that the sort of running through line is that no one can tell. Like, Reed's character in the first episode says, "Oh, I thought she was in a good mood today." I don't know if that's
when Tony Hale says, Clea says, how could you tell she's in postpartum depression? And Tony Hale says, because of the hair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wear a really special wig this season. The idea behind it, Dave Mandel wanted it to look like I cut my hair myself because the baby kept grabbing at it and I just couldn't handle it. And that what had happened is it was asymmetrical and it looked so bad that I went to a proper salon to get it fixed, but it's just like a little bit off. Like one side's a little longer, it's kind of choppy in the back, and then it's this like almost cool but a bit too brassy blonde color with bangs.
Oh, that's the other thing that we're seeing about Catherine this season is as much as she wants to be a warmer person than her mother, she probably has more of her mother in her than she knows and can't handle having a child and can't handle the needs of a child.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about her as a character navigating being a mother, given that her relationship with her mother was so volatile. And it does a really interesting, there's this duality where I think in a lot of ways it makes Catherine more aware of what she's been lacking, because I think it's in this season more than ever, you see Catherine's frustration with her mom, even if she doesn't express it to her. Like, she has a couple solid lines of asides of just wishing she could get rid of her, basically, in so many words. But then you also see a lot of Selina come through in really small moments. There's a moment in the latter part of the season that I won't, say specifically because we decided I'm the most likely to spoil something really important.
True?
Yeah. We were all talking, and Dave Mandel.
How was that decided?
Well, I actually said it, and Dave agreed. He was like, "Speak very slowly when you do live interviews." But I lost my train of thought.
Oh, just how Selina comes through for Catherine eventually.
Yeah, I think there's a moment in the latter season where I really considered the way, like, Julia's intonation of speaking when I played the scene.
How has it been developing the relationship with Clea as an actress and the characters as well?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think because as soon as she was introduced, there was a whole other side to my character that was seen. And, you see Catherine in her still Catherine-y way experience joy for the first time and experience falling in love. And I actually love that it's a healthy relationship and that, she's
she's
still
so supportive.
able to have that. She has this unconditionally loving presence in her life. And just as the keeper of that character, it's really nice that she has that.
But we are seeing some cracks there, right?
Yeah, I think parenting together definitely brings up bumps in the road.
And Catherine has some jealousy issues, I think. No?
Yeah.
I'm not spoiling too much by saying.
No.
Okay.
No, those are subtle undertones for sure. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think she's probably not feeling as great about herself, which is probably true of Catherine always, but particularly now. But yeah, working with Clea as an actress was so exciting and so cool. I generally, if I'm working with someone I admire, don't tell them that because I don't want it to get in the way of us getting to know each other. But I remember at the end of season 5, we were in Washington, D.C. shooting on location, and this waitress came over saying to Clea, I know you from something. And I was like, you might know her from Argo or maybe The Faculty or maybe But I'm a Cheerleader or also Girl Interrupted. Like, I just totally gave myself away. So
that is her too, though. That Clea is this actress who's been in an incredible amount of iconic movies that you would imagine people approaching going, what do I know you from? And it's like,
so many
everything.
Things. Yeah.
Well,
and she doesn't look like anyone you've ever seen as well, so she's just very striking in every way. But yeah, she's been such an amazing scene partner and friend.
You grew up in an acting family or a performance family of actors, say, right? And performers and creators. When did you decide that you yourself wanted to act?
I was actually just talking about this earlier. I wanted to be a doctor until I was 10, and I became hypochondriac, and I would read these medical books, and then I would imagine that I had whatever it was that I was reading about. So I realized I was too sensitive and empathetic to be a doctor.
It's very Catherine.
It is actually, yeah. I know. I was saying something at the premiere the other day about how it was so cool it was at Lincoln Center because I used to go there to watch old videos of performances when I was in college at NYU. And I said something about watching postmodern dance. And then I was like, oh, wow, I guess we're a little more similar than I had realized.
They maybe just started writing for you?
Yeah.
So you were saying that you wanted to be a doctor, and when did you decide that you wanted to be an actress?
I went to an art school, and I think once you're in 9th grade, you have to choose which sort of lane you want to stay in. And I had been doing a lot of dance at the time, but I didn't see myself, continuing that in a career path. So I just decided to start doing plays. And I think there was something about the community aspect of it that I just really loved. And then, I'd say around college application time, I came to New York, and I wasn't planning on looking at NYU, but I ran into a friend who was going on a tour, and I just fell in love with it. And I really feel like I decided then. I probably knew sooner, but I think because I came from this acting family, it felt like such an expected choice, especially, growing up in Los Angeles and around it, that I think it took me a really long time to even admit it to myself, let alone anyone else. And I think it wasn't until I committed to studying that in school that I really took it seriously, and everyone else did too.
And you started doing theater. You've been doing TV now for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Do you miss theater? Is there a part of you that wants to take on a play? Or
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I could make a living doing just theater, I would, because I love that audience interaction. I love the spontaneity of kind of not knowing what that night will bring. And I think being on camera was such an adjustment for me.
especially a show like this where it's not like a sitcom where you have a studio audience and you have to do big performance things, everything is really sanded down and grounded for this show.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, luckily, though, the way that they shoot it, you don't really feel the presence of the cameras. It's very much almost like a documentary. And so in that sense, it was a good kind of way to dip my toe in. But yeah, I would love to do more theater.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
What was it? So Reed had told me that everybody was on set the last day. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody was on set every day of the last week. I'd say with the final table read, Julia gave a speech and everyone was just weeping, and I think that sort of continued intermittently for the whole episode. But yeah, Clea and I wrapped a few days before everyone else, and we were the first main cast to wrap, so I think everyone was really caught off guard because Dave came in pretending he was going to give notes on the scene and then wrapped us, and everyone was sobbing, and then the floodgates just opened, and then finally, Julia was the last person to wrap the final scene that night, and there must have been 100 people that came in Video Village that were just sitting around. And
yeah. I know that other shows wrap up and they have season finale or series finales, but for some reason I can't imagine that it's rarely like that. Like there was something about the show and also what she went through in this before shooting this last season that made everybody just so grateful to have been a part of it.
Yeah, I think all of us feel it's not lost on us how incredible the writing is, how important the show has been, particularly in this current political landscape. But beyond that, we're just so close as a cast. I know everyone says that, but we actually are. And then having the year off and knowing that it was our final season, I think there was so much anticipation. It almost felt like senior year of high school by the time we got there, where every moment felt so precious and so fleeting. And so, yeah, I think I haven't been on a series before. This was my first job out of school, so I don't actually have a point of reference, but I would be surprised if it's always like that.
Why do you think everybody on this cast is so close?
I think it's a lot of things. I think Armando Iannucci is really masterful, not just at casting people who are great for certain roles, but also that are just good-hearted, good-natured people. I think Julia really set a strong tone and is such a formidable, generous, warm, incredible person, and I think that's infectious and kind of trickles down. But I also think some of it is that we were shooting for 4 years in Baltimore, and none of us knew anyone in Baltimore, so we just had each other, and we would hang out as a cast all the time. We were all staying in the same hotel. We would have dinners together, and so there's sort of that camp mentality that once we moved back to LA, we had already forged that bond and really needed each other in a way that I don't know if we would have if we had started in Los Angeles. But I suspect we still would, because I think with that big of an ensemble, you really have to listen and take care of each other. And so...
Also an ensemble that's together a lot in scenes. It's not as if
Yeah.
it's an ensemble where everybody's disconnected and like comes together in the end. For the most part, even with this season, with the exception of Jonah, you guys are all kind of in rooms together or sort of nearby each other, coming in and out of rooms. So you're generally always on set together, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. And there's always been a culture of if you rap and you want to come and sit by the monitor, you can. And I did that a lot. So
Why?
I just loved watching the process. I actually genuinely love the show, and it makes me laugh. But I don't know. I think it's what you're talking about, that sort of family feeling that we all have. I just will never forget at table reads. One of the memories that sticks out in my head is just whenever they were over, we would kind of linger by the stale Le Pain Quotidien muffins because we didn't want to go home. Everyone just really enjoyed being around each other, and everyone is so funny that it's always so great to watch, Matt Walsh kind of riff on something and then spill his coffee on his shirt, or, see Tony and Julia. This particular group of people together is so unusual. And I think I always felt really aware, being like the baby of the family, that I might not have met Kevin Dunn otherwise. And so they're just such interesting people to talk to, both professionally and personally. They're just really, really incredible.
You have to be I think you have to be smart in some way to get this, to be able to perform this show.
No.
No,
We're
sorry,
just
you
a
probably
group
don't
of
want to answer
dummies.
that. And be like,
Yeah,
it's true,
no.
we're geniuses. But I think in order to show up on set and work that fast with this material, you have to know how to do the homework. You have to know
Yeah.
how people talk. You have to be intuitive.
Well, intuitive is definitely part of it, because I will say that without throwing our genius writers under the bus, who are literally the unsung heroes of this show, it's always kind of a moving target, and we never have fully finalized scripts, and we're getting alts on the day all the time. And if you're in a big ensemble scene, like you said, someone else's alts affect yours, and so there's very little preparation that you can really do. Yeah, and it was really interesting to add a baby into the mix of that. And when you have this screaming thing that's their heart is pounding and they hate you. I mean, those children, bless their hearts, they just heavily associated me with taking them away from their mother. So they every time they saw me, they would wail. It was
Compliments
so
your performance, as Catherine having postpartum depression pretty well.
Yeah, they did not identify me as a maternal presence.
We have a question coming in from Twitter. It's what's something about your character that nobody else knows?
Ooh, that's a good question. My character, okay, this is a really deep backstory one. This was not written, but and it was edited out of the actual thing, because again, in the earlier seasons, we did a lot more improv. But I remember doing a scene in a car where my character is very flirtatious with Mike. So I think in my head, Catherine had a crush on Mike because in the earlier seasons, he was the only person, Mike McClintock, because he was the only person that was actually nice to her. Like, he was truly the only person that made eye contact with her or asked her questions about college. And so in my head, the kind of character that had the parenting and the kind of father that she has would identify Mike as someone safe.
Yeah, but also her finding Mike attractive at some point in her life, like, is good backstory for her, like, where she goes later in the season. It now makes even more sense.
Yeah. No, I know. Dave was really funny when we sat down. He was like, well, it seems like Catherine's relationships tend to die on the vine, so we're going to remedy that. And, you know, the sort of idea being that she was looking in the wrong places.
I think we have one question in the audience. Who were you with the question right here?
Hi. I wanted to ask, did you develop a backstory for your character? And also, what's your favorite line from what your character said?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely had a backstory or just certain tricks, like imagining that I had something foul smelling on my upper lip so that I just always looked upset. But I think a lot of the backstory was actually written in Catherine's sort of case specifically. I think you can really garner a lot from the way that her mother treats her and then the introduction of her father and just sort of the unwelcome environment that she's constantly in. I think I also garnered a lot of backstory even from the way she like carries herself in the world and the way she always looks like she got dressed in the dark and those kinds of things. But what was the second question you asked me?
Do you have a favorite line that you've said?
Oh, God. It's so... Yeah, there's so many, but for some reason the one, because I've been asked this before, the one that keeps standing out is something from the first season where I say, are we really going to trust the guy with the police sketch face of a rapist, which is in reference to Jonah. And it just really made me laugh. Yeah.
Sarah, congratulations again. I love the show so much. I think Veep is my favorite show. It makes me so happy. When I was watching it over the weekend, I was thinking to myself, nothing makes me laugh as hard as this show. It's the absolute best. I'm really gonna miss it. And by miss it, I mean just rewatch it all the time. The 7th and final season premieres this Sunday on HBO. Sarah Sutherland, everybody, let's hear it.